Hi folks, Mike Schramke with Larry Stove Sand Equipment. Thank you for your business. Thank you for your purchase of a Coyote DK10 or DK10 SE. Magnificent machine, and obviously all of us appreciate it, and we would all like this, your ownership process, your ownership experience to start on a positive note. And I think proper operation of the tractor is a step in the right direction. So, you know what I'm going to say. Everybody hates these. But you need to read the owner's manuals. The owner's manuals, I'm telling you, they're kind of stump proof. You could make a table game out of them, try to stump the owner's manual. I don't think you can. Every question in here, every question you might have, I should say, I think is in the owner's manuals. You got one for the tractor, you got one for the loader. If you bought a backhoe, you also got one for the backhoe. I think a couple of things to point out. You like my phone case? The tractor's brand new, and the first oil change will be at 50 hours. Now, don't worry, you don't have to do it at 50 hours every time. They want you to do it at 50 hours, and we want you to do it at 50 hours the first time, because it's new. And if there were any contaminants from the casting process of the engine or whatever, they would have been caught in the filter, and it's a proper thing to do. After that, at 50 hours, you'll also, I should say, change the hydraulic filter on your DK10 or DK10 SE. And if you bought an SE, that means you bought a hydrostat. It also takes a hydrostat filter. So you don't have to change the oil of the hydraulic system, just the filters. So at 50 hours, you're going to change the engine oil and filter and the hydraulic system filters. Filters if you have a hydrostat, filter if you have a manual transmission. After that, the oil changes are recommended at 400 hours or annually. Most people, they just do it annually, unless you have a backhoe service and you get the idea. And it's all right in here. The scheduled maintenance chart is right in the brochure. Chapter 7, starting on page 4. And the air cleaner at 200 hours or annually, the fuel filter at 200 hours, and it's all in here. One thing I would like to point out is the lubrication of the grease zerks. You can't do that too much, especially on the loader, which is being used constantly. In fact, Coyote recommends to lubricate the loader zerks at 10 hours, every 10 hours. So you might put in the back of your mind, every time I put fuel in this, I'm going to go ahead around the tractor and lubricate it. The engine oil, we would prefer to use Coyote lubricants. You're not required to. You're not required to maintain warranty. You don't have to use Coyote lubricants. If you don't, buy good stuff. Don't get junk. And I'm sure you wouldn't, but I just want to throw that out there. The acceptable weights would be 1030, 1040, or 1540. We happen to use 1540, and Coyote branded lubricants for the motor oil would be a 1540. Make sure it's a diesel certified with a CJ, like Carlos Juan CJ rating. It'll be in the book. Modern diesel engines use that particular rating. It's a diesel certification with a CJ. It takes 6 quarts of oil when you're doing the filter, which should be every time you change the oil anyway. And if you want an easy way to remember that, you bought a 3-cylinder engine, it is 2 quarts per cylinder, so it takes 6 quarts. This is a fuse, obviously. 60 amp. But what's unique about this fuse is it's a slow blow fuse, which is just what it sounds like. And it's the main fuse that is the lead into the entire circuit box of the tractor, and it allows a little bit of delayed resistance when it takes a huge load, like when you start the tractor. So If you blow this fuse, make sure you replace it with a 60 amp slow blow fuse. Don't just get a 60 amp. So I'd like to point that out. The warranty on the on your DK10 or DK10 SE, for the first 2 years, it is bumper to bumper. So if the headlights burn out or the horn doesn't blow, it's covered. No deductible and no limit on hours. That's as generous of a warranty as anybody has. Obviously, what's not covered is stuff that you unfortunately break through accident or misuse or, just oops, and we all do that. I break stuff all the time. So breaking stuff is not covered. Stuff that breaks is covered. If you, if you're driving through the woods and a stick goes through your fan, your plastic fan, plastic, that would not be covered. The good news is I happen to know the plastic fans are cheap. I mean, I'm going to be wrong here, but they're $20 or something like that. Now they're more than that. They're 30 or 40, but you get the idea. So 2 years bumper to bumper. Then that's followed up with 4 years additionally of powertrain protection. And that would be the internally lubricated parts of the engine, transmission, and axles. So if the rear axle comes apart through no fault of your own in 5 years, and could have 4,000 hours on it, doesn't matter. Is it covered? Yes, it is. No deductible and no limit on hours. Again, a really awesome warranty. If in 3 years you're after your 2 year, bumper to bumper, if in 3 years your alternator or starter goes out, is that covered? No. It's not the stuff that bolts onto the engine. It is the engine. It's the engine, the internally lubricated parts that would be covered. Something that's not covered, and I want to point this out, is hauling back to a repairing dealership. Hopefully us, but you might be watching this in Maine. Hauling the machine to the dealer for maintenance or for warranty is not something that's covered. There's a charge for that. So, give a call, and it's, it's not a money-making center for us. We just, want to get our money back for hours, labor hours and fuel and stuff like that. It's not terribly expensive, but it's not free either. Let's do this now. Let's go outside and do a walk around of the DK10 SEs. And most of it will apply for the DK10s too. The only difference really is the fact the DK10 is a manual transmission and the SE is a hydrostat. And there's a couple other little differences. But let's go outside and let's look at it and get you acclimated, get you on this thing. All right, Charlie, you want to go outside and help people? Should we do it? Should we go outside? All right, let's do it. All right, come on. Charlie knows quite a bit about this. Yeah, he's pumped. Come on, boy. Let's do it. Oh man, is it going to rain? Come on. Look at that. All right, so let's go over a couple of the things to familiarize yourself. And again, nothing substitutes for the owner's manuals. I know nobody likes to read owner's manuals. Please read the owner's manuals. Pardon me. Put them in the bathroom. Who knows? Maybe it's good reading material there, but it is important. The service intervals are at different times. They have, different requirements. Even the grease zerks, some are every 10 hours, some are 50 hours. So please refer to the owner's manual. But let's go through a few things. Whether you bought a DK10 or a DK10 SE like these two, most of the stuff that I talk about here is going to be similar, and it's going to be identical. In fact, in most cases, and I'll try to point out a couple of the things that might be different on the SE series, aside from the fact that it's obviously a hydrostat versus the DK10, which is a shuttle shift. I would like to point out first off, there is a lock on the loader control to lock the loader in the upright position so that if you're working on the tractor and somebody comes by and hits the joystick, that it doesn't come down on you. Forget that's there. this is the only acceptable way to do it. Piece of angle iron. If you don't have one, come by, I'll give you one. It's just scrap metal, and putting it in there eliminates the chance that somebody can come by and hit the loader, because if it comes down, it will kill you. You will die, and dying is bad. And I won't sell you another tractor. And I'll harbor a resentment for not paying attention to what I said. Everybody here, with as goofy as we get sometimes and as behind scheduling and everything else, we do not ever deviate on that. We do that. You would just simply set it in place and then bring the loader down gently, take the weight off of it, and that is not coming down. So you can feel free to walk under the loader with confidence that nobody's going to cut you in half. As I said, the first oil change on this is at 50 hours because it is new. Clamshell opening up, the wasp was optional. If you didn't pay for a wasp, you didn't get one. The clamshell opening, and it exposes everything you're going to need to get to. The air cleaner is right here. There is a little thing here, a piece of rubber that you know, you can actually put your finger in. Took me 4 years to find out what that is. Tractors vibrate, and what it does is it vibrates. As it vibrates, the particulate matter is falling on the bottom, and every once in a while you can just come by and burp it, and most of the dry matter will come out. It has a lift-out screen. If you do not clean the grass off this screen, your tractor will overheat. It's not like it might overheat. It absolutely will overheat if you don't do that. So, and it just snaps right back into place, and it's got a little bow, and that's fine. And that's how it hangs. This is a SE model, so it has a hydrostat transmission. The hydrostat has one extra external oil cooler for the hydrostat transmission. Over here, the routine maintenance is all kind of right here. The oil filter. By the way, when you change your oil, get a paint pen and write the hours on it. It helps you, you know, when did I change the oil? Well, it's right there. The fuel filter is here. I'm not going to get into the priming system and the fuel water separator because you do need to read the owner's manual about that. Eventually a light will come on the dash telling you that the water has accumulated in here and needs to be drained out. It's not hard, but it does. You do need to hold the book while you do it. The dipstick is here. And again, if you forget how much oil this takes, this is a 3-cylinder engine. It takes 2 quarts per cylinder, 6 quarts, gallon and a half. We recommend Coyote lubricants, although it is not required to maintain your warranty. And what else did I maybe miss? Feel free to, you know, wash it, pressure washer, whatever. You're not gonna hurt anything in there if you want to clean it up. It's not a bad way to go. This zert right here, and this is just an example. This Greek zert on the, if I was a technician, I would know what that thing's called. But that is actually a 50-hour zert. The loader, and there's, you know, seems like 8,000 of them, 10 hours. 10 hours. And I'll tell you what happens if you don't lubricate the loader. This is a very large pin that goes through, you know, these are all pins, and they, you know, they obviously pivot. If they're dry, eventually this will wallow out, and the only way to fix it is to fill it with solid steel and then drill it out and start over. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to remind yourself every time you put fuel in it, go ahead and hit all the loader zerts. In the back, as you, John, come around this way, as you know, Coyotes are unique in the fact that you can raise and lower the 3-point using this right here. If the engine was running, it would go back up. There's also a lot of grease zerts on all of these pieces too, and you'll discover soon that if you don't lubricate the threads on all of these, or grease zerts if it has them, that they'll become very hard to turn and very frustrating. On DK10s like this, it has the turnbuckle type of check chain. This thing's called a check chain. And some tractors have a drop pin thing, some have a turnbuckle. They both work fine. They both serve their purpose. These are prone to vibrating loose, and if it happens, this nut will back off and the check chain will swing down. You'll run over it and it'll get lost, and you'll have to buy another one. They're not expensive, but still. I would say every time you put fuel in the tank, go ahead and tighten the check chains and the stops on the check chains. This pivots up. I've had some people not know that, and putting on the drive shaft without pivoting that up is a bit of a challenge. If you have a DK10 SE like this one, it came standard with one set of rear hydraulic remotes, 2 ports, 1 set. If you bought a DK10 with a manual transmission, it comes standard with no rear hydraulic remotes, but you may have bought 1 set or you may have bought 2 sets. On this, it came with 1 set, you may have bought 2 sets. In any event, when it comes time to hook something up, there is not, there's not a ring of Dante's hell harder than trying to make that couple and get it to be able to plug in, unless you know the trick. And I'm going to show you over here, because I've got that loader propped up. When you hook any hydraulic line up, whether it's the quick connect on the loader or anything in the back, it is virtually impossible to do until all of the hydraulically activated implements are down and the fluid has returned to the reservoir, and it's just nice and moot and mild and calm. Otherwise, you're fighting pressure, and these things generate about 3,000 psi. There is not, you couldn't use 2 men, a boy, and a prayer to get the hydraulic couplers to couple if they're under pressure. So, put the loader down and watch what happens. You think the loader's down until you really start looking at it. John, hang on that loader there. Oh, look at that. If I move this, just what I'm doing, and now you can get me here, is I am, without the engine running, I am doing this repeatedly, and then same thing on the rear hydraulic lift, the 3-point lift. I put it all the way down and I move it a couple of times. Now, I can couple those hoses because there's no charge on the system. It is not under pressure. As long as we're standing next to a cab. If you bought a cab tractor, these innocuous looking things that we probably forgot to mention to you are, they have thumb screws. And that is where the cabin air filter goes. And you'd want to check it to see if it's blocked, polluted, contaminated, and eventually buy a new one. Just like your modern car or truck has filtrated air on the inside, so do these. And if you're using a rotary cutter, you're baling hay, you know how much dust that generates. So you could keep it clean by maintaining those filters. Also on the cab tractor, the rear bottle here, and it's protected, is the washer fluid for the front, and if you purchased a rear washer, for the back. That is where you fill it. Obviously, if you're in a cold weather climate, you'll want to cut it, not just use water because it will freeze. If John will get that vent in the back with the red knob, just like in your modern car or truck, you could draw air from the outside or recirculate it from the inside. And if you recirculate, it's like putting it on max on a car. If you recirculate it, it just does that. It recirculates the inside air, and that helps really keep, if you're in a dusty condition, keeping the outside pollutants from coming into the inside of the tractor. Fresh air is, fresh air. As I look at the fuel tank, it's a good time to remind you, if you have a one of those big steel drop tanks that your grandfather had that he used for his Massey 235 back in the 40s, use that as the center of a bonfire this weekend. Get rid of them. They're nasty. They're they're full of crud, and you'll go through fuel filters and you'll wonder why you keep going through fuel filters. These modern engines that have common rail diesel injections take clean fuel. They're picky eaters. So clean fuel, preferably from a plastic can that you toted from a fuel station. If it's wintertime and you're wondering whether to use treated fuel, the answer is yes. What happens is the water in the fuel will freeze inside the fuel filter, and the tractor won't start. If you buy your fuel from a place that treats it for winter, like most modern name brand fuel stations do, that's great. You don't have to do anything else. If that's not the case, make sure you put a cap full of fuel stabilizer anti-gel in the tank, 1 ounce for the entire fuel tank, and it will never freeze. Don't forget that your tractor has a skid steer, universal skid steer type mount for the bucket, and we talked about this when you bought it. Any universal set of pallet forks, hay spear, it's universal, so it works. The front axle takes 90 weight gear oil, and that is in the red cap. It's checked, and it is filled, not filled, it's added to. Don't fill that thing up. It's half level of the axle is the right amount. That takes 90 weight gear oil. The rest of the hydraulic system on the tractor uses UTF, Universal Tractor Fluid. Coyote sells a very good UTF. You're not required to use Coyote fluids, but if you do, there you go, and you know you've got the right stuff. If not, buy the good stuff. Whenever you go somewhere, whether it's Sam's or auto parts store, they'll have a 5-gallon jug of UTF junk, and they'll have a can of premium UTF. Don't be a cheapskate. Buy the good stuff. It's got detergents in it, and it's less apt to break down. And it is checked. Thank you. Coyote was nice enough to paint it gray with the rest of the tractor. Here's a little trick that I do. I get a paint pen. When these tractors are new, the UTF is clear. You'll never find it on the stick. Take the stick out, wipe it off, get a paint pen, yellow, and paint this, or just spray paint it, but paint it yellow or something, anything, and let it dry. And then when you put it back in, you'll be able to see the fluid very well. So the fluids that the entire tractor takes, it's pretty simple. The cooling system uses coolant. The engine uses motor oil. All of the hydraulics and the transmission use UTF, and the front axle takes 90 weight gear oil. That is the four fluids that this tractor takes. The last thing I want to touch on is, I know half of you aren't going to do this, but I hope you will. Modern diesel engines, not just Daedongs, Coyotes, everybody's, are made to run. That's how they cool themselves. That's how they clean themselves. They are made to run. This has a PTO max operating RPM of 2,600. So 2,600 is the maximum the engine should be run at. And believe it or not, that's not even the maximum it will run at. It'll run up to, it's governed at about 3,400. But 26 is the magic number. Run the tractor, especially if you bought an SC with a hydrostat, run it at 2,600 RPMs. You're not doing the tractor any favors by running it at low RPMs. The tractor cleans itself. As I said, the diesel particulate filter works when the tractor is allowed to stretch its legs. The one time that I wouldn't want you to do that is when you activate the PTO. So I'm going to start the tractor. John's going to back up just a little bit for safety reasons. I'm going to start the tractor, raise the rear cutter, and I'm going to engage the PTO at a low speed and then spool up to the 2600. And the reason you do that is these electric PTOs are like a light switch. You flick them and man, it's like boom, it's on. It's not the old school clutch thing. These electric activated PTOs do activate immediately. It won't hurt the tractor. You're not going to break this. But it's not very kind to the implement to hit it at that high of a velocity. So start it low and spool it up, and I'll start it. So brakes on, transmission's in neutral. The other thing is, as I'm doing this, the glow plug. Yeah, forget it has one. Unless you're in the upper peninsula of Michigan and it's 18 below zero, just turn the key, it'll start right up. So I'm going to raise it up. Okay. Idle on this machine is about 900 RPMs. I'm going to start the PTO at about 1200. And then I'm going to spool up. That is the proper way to do it. Start it at low RPMs and then let that sucker fly. 2600 RPMs, let it run, let it stretch its legs. If you're just running across the pasture or driving down to the mailbox, let it run. If the tractor is running, let it run. Now, obviously, when you're hooking up an implement, you might let it idle, raise and lower the 3-point or whatever. That's fine. But when the tractor's in motion, 2600 is a magic number. It does have an E rating, and the government always likes things like that. And if you look at the tachometer, John, I hope you can get it. 2600 is right here. 1800 is right here. 1800 says 540E. Well, Mike, why didn't you tell me what that was when I bought it? Well, because I'm not the brightest guy in the world and I forget stuff. 540E is economy. And they do stuff like that to please the government that, Coyote's a green company, and everybody else does it too. But what that means is the PTO will turn at 540 RPMs, which is what all of our implements are nowadays, as long as it's at least at that number, which on this tractor is 1800. So you say, well, why would I do that? Economy. If you're working the tractor like a tractor, run it at 2600 RPMs. If you want to save a little bit of fuel and you're doing like a post hole diggers don't really take any horsepower, a generator, a log splitter, things that take almost no horsepower, you can run it at 1800 RPMs on the engine, and it will spin at 540 RPMs. Kind of nice, but if you're driving the tractor, if your foot is on the pedal, or if it's a manual transmission and you're headed forward or reverse, have I said it enough? 2600 RPMs. Anyway, thank you again for buying a DK10 from us. We are always here to help. At Springfield, there's John Lechner, who's the store manager. There's Thomas Reynolds, who's the senior tech. There's a bunch of other people. Samantha, who answers the phone. Everybody here wants to answer your questions. If you bought your tractor from Murfreesboro, Matt is the general manager, Adam's the store manager, Jim Wilcox, service director for both stores, and Jason Buchanan is the senior master tech there, along with everybody else. And Michelle answers the phone down there and wants to help as well. Don't guess, refer to your owner's manual, and if that doesn't get your question answered about, call us, email us, send us a smoke signal. We don't like unanswered questions. Anyway, again, thank you. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your business. Enjoy your Coyote, and welcome to the pack.